Okay, so you're going to go through and correct your quiz with your correcting pen as I go through and do the solutions. I already started on this first one because I deleted my video, but I'm going to go back and say what I said and we'll start over. But this was t minus 8 equals 12. And so I changed that to adding the opposite because t minus 8 and t plus negative 8 are the exact same thing. So my whole purpose is to get t alone so I can figure out what value of t would make this a true statement, would make this, whatever this is, minus 8, actually equal to 12. So I'm going to manipulate these equations until I get t alone, every one of these equations. So I start with my do undo, and I already put in here DOO for order of operations. And that is what is being done to the t. So what was being done to the t was t minus 8 or t plus negative 8, same thing. So I put minus 8 there. I am undoing this equation to get t alone. So the undo would be the additive inverse of negative 8, which is positive 8, or the opposite operation, which is adding 8. So I'm going to go back to my equation, and my undo when I need to solve the equation is to add 8 here to negative 8. And those are additive inverses. They add up to 0. And I did that on purpose because I want to get t alone, and t plus 0 is t alone. So on the other side of the equation, right now it's off balance because I added 8 here, so I have to add 8 to this side to get it back to balance. And 12 plus 8 is 20. So t is 20. So now I'm going to check that using my order of operations. So 20 I'm going to put in for t. So that will be 20, and it was minus 8 equals question mark 12. So this side's 12, so this side needs to be 12. Now I'm not going to put plus a negative here because I know I can subtract when this is bigger. I know 20 minus 8 is 12, so I'm just going to leave it that way. But these both mean the same thing, so it checks. My second equation is 1/3 times x equals 18. And I know it's multiply because number next to a letter or a variable means to multiply. So I'm going to put in the do times 1/3. And to undo that, we would put either divided by 1/3. When you divide by a fraction, that means multiply by its reciprocal. So either one of these work. On this side, I'm going to go ahead and divide by 1/3 because any number divided by itself is 1, so that's easy. So I have 1x alone, and then 1 times x is x alone. The other side, I have to also do the same thing. Well, the same thing, dividing by 1/3 is multiplying by 3. That means the same thing. So I'm just going to multiply by 3. 3 times 10 is 30, plus 3 times 8 is 24. 30 and 24 is 54. So x is 54. So now when I go to check this, I'm going to do 1/3 times 54. Does that equal 18? So I'm going to put 54 over 1. This side needs to be 18. Divide out of 3 here. Divide a 3 in the numerator, and I do get 18. So 18 times 1 divided by 1 is 18. Got 18 alone, so there. Didn't really need that equal sign there. They check. Looking at both sides. All right, the last one, number 3. On this side, anyway. Is okay. 17 minus m equals negative 20. So I'm going to change that to plus a negative. And when we look at this, it's a two-step equation because I've got a negative on my m. And remember, my whole objective is to get this m down here alone. No negative on it. If there's no negative on it, it's a positive m. So I've got to make this a positive m. And I know that the coefficient on this m is 1. So it's like having a negative 1 times m is the same thing as negative m. So I'm going to say multiply, we always multiply first in order of operations on the m, and then we would be adding a positive 17. So I'm just going to put plus 17. So to undo, we're going to subtract 17 or add a negative 17 and divide the opposite of multiplying by negative 1. And I know I'm dividing by negative 1. You don't change the sign because remember when I wanted to get the multiplicative inverse is just the opposite operation. And when I take this negative 1 divided by this negative 1, I'll have my positive m alone. But we start with subtracting 17 or adding negative 17. I'll even put a plus sign out there. That's 0. And 0 plus negative 1m is just negative 1m. On the other side, I'm going to add negative 17. That's a negative. And negative 17 and negative 20, a bunch of negatives, you just add them up. Or we say a bunch of bad guys equals negative 37. So now the second step is to divide by negative 1. Now here's where we get that m alone, because negative 1 divided by negative 1 is positive 1m, or m alone. And on the other side, we divide that by negative 1, and negative 37 divided by negative 1 is positive 37. So let's go check it. So we say that 17 minus m equals, question mark, negative 20. Does it? Let's see. So this side's negative 20. We're going to put in 37. I'm going to go ahead, since that second number is bigger, and change it to plus a negative 37. So if we positives, we take these positives, combine them with 17 of these negatives, then there's 20 negatives left. So balance. Check. All right, so now we're going to page 2. Page 2, it's a two-stepper. And if we look at order of operations on the m, we would divide by 5 first. And then we would subtract 14. So we're going to undo that. We would add 14 first, and then we would multiply by 5. So let's draw a line here, and let's keep this balanced the whole way, and we're working to get m alone. So we add 14 to both sides. Now, this is minus 14, so that's the same thing as plus and negative 14. So negative 14 and 14 are 0. And 0 plus m over 5 is m over 5. We have to add 14 to the other side, so we get 27. Then we're going to multiply both sides by 5. On this side, I'm going to put 5 over 1. This side, I'll just put 5. Now, on the left side, the 5's divide out, and I get 1m, or m alone. And then 27 times 5, well, 5 times 20 is 100. 5 times 7 is 35. So that's going to be 135. So now let's check it. So in our check, we're going to do 135 divided by 5. And then we're going to subtract 14. And we're going to see, is that equal to 13? So if I do 13 divided by 5, I get 27, and 27 minus 14 is 13, so it checks. Last one. I forgot to put 135 down there. It's okay. All right, last one. The do undo. Okay, what's being done to the x? Well, first of all, I'm going to change that to plus a negative 5 so that I know x is being multiplied by negative 5. And then we're adding a positive 6. So let's put plus 6. Undo, I'm going to do minus 6 first, and then the opposite, or the multiplicative inverse of multiplying by negative 5 is dividing by negative 5, or multiplying by that multiplicative inverse, negative 1/5. All right, so let's draw our line. And we're getting x alone, so we start with subtracting 6 from both sides. So now I have 0 plus negative 5x, which is negative 5x. On the left side, 36 minus 6 is 30. Then I'm going to divide both sides by negative 5, so I didn't have to use that multiplying by negative 1/5. But if I did, I'll get the same answer. So negative 5 divided by negative 5 is 1x, or x alone, and 30 divided by negative 5 is negative 6. So x is equal, I'll just put down here, x is equal to negative 6. So now I'm going to check it. So to check it, I'm going to take this negative 6, substitute it in for x, and evaluate. So 36, is that equal to 6 plus negative 5x, and the x is negative 5 times x would be negative 6. Because x is negative 6. So I'm going to multiply first because that's order of operations, and I get 30, negative 5 times negative 6, and then when I add 6, I get 36. 36 on both sides, it checks. And we're finished. If you need to go back and rewind on any of these, please do, and make sure you've got each one of those corrected.